I first got into this area of research because I saw my father-in-law had dementia, and I was horrified at the time at the way in which care was provided. I think one of the things that I find sometimes quite distressing is that it's now probably 15, 20 years down the line, and actually things have not improved that much. And I think for me, that says something about, there's lots of research out on that. How do we actually get that research into practice in ways that are meaningful and actually change practice? So I was very keen that we held an event like this in which we could bring that to the fore, demonstrate the innovation and the strength of the work around dementia that's going on at Lancaster. So the local people of Lancaster and Lancashire roundabout, the people that work in the third sector who are, on the front line, and the people who work in the health services and the social services, illustrated to them what we're doing, and hopefully to make a connection so we can think about not just the research that we do, but what does it mean in practice. The importance of the work that we do at the Centre for Ageing Research around dementia is about the interdisciplinarity of it, about bringing together people who are working in very disparate disciplines to look at that problem from those very interdisciplinary stances. You've got people working from biomedicine right through to technology, innovations, health services research, right through to the arts. So I think there is something very interesting about the way in which, as researchers, we can demonstrate a whole breadth and bring new ideas and draw on that expertise that runs right across those disciplines. And I think that also helps us to think differently.
When you appreciate and understand the very, very disorientating, confusing, frightening experience that some people with dementia can have in environments that they're not familiar with, it's difficult to imagine a setting, any other setting other than a hospital ward, where they may well be the most at sea and they're unwell by virtue of being there. So getting it right is absolutely crucial. And so understanding what training those staff have, all of those staff across the hospital, is really important. And that's what we're trying to capture, to understand what that training does, how it helps people provide better care, and how it improves the outcomes for patients that are admitted into hospital.
Over the last 15 years at Lancaster University, I've been using and research knowledge we gathered over the previous 20 years on eye tracking. I've been applying that to Alzheimer's disease to try to develop an early marker of the disease and to develop a technique for monitoring the increase in dementia during the course of the disease. Across the world, in places like Japan and India, there's going to be an increase in dementia, and there's going to be a global need for non-invasive, affordable, easily accessible procedures, and eye tracking fits that bill. It is something that is culturally friendly. So the system that we see as being successful and we're working towards is a system that would have global implications and could be applied in different cultures.
What we're saying is that whilst dementia is a disease, it can also be defined as a disability. If you define it as a disability, you can use positive legislation, human rights legislation, our Equalities Act, to ensure that society doesn't discriminate against people with dementia, adapts things like physical environments to our behaviours and attitudes to be inclusive and helpful for people with dementia, in the same way that we've are much more inclusive and have a much more positive response to people with physical disabilities or learning disabilities. So let's learn from what they've achieved and try and apply that and use legislation and a positive model of disability to ensure the same achievements can be won for people with dementia.
We have developed a drug which is now already in clinical trials. It's being tested in patients with Alzheimer's disease, and it already has shown first signs of improvement. It demonstrates that it does something, it helps people. We have to keep running a trial to get all the data until we can draw a final conclusion. But the good news is that there are drugs being tested now that will make a difference, And I'm very optimistic that we will get some kind of drugs onto the market in the next 3 years, maybe.
So we've been working on this SAMS project. What we're trying to do is see whether this can be part of the armoury for earlier detection of the onset of dementia. Because one of the problems about dementia is people typically have to be persuaded to go and see their doctors. Whereas if we can kind of monitor people passively as they go about their ordinary lives, doing normal things like using the computer, writing emails, organising their photographs, sending emails and things, then if we can infer from that activity whether their cognitive health is in decline, then that is a kind of passive background way of monitoring people's health that doesn't require any action on their part beyond accepting to have the software installed on their computer.
Within an aging population we have in the UK and most developed world, and the fact that people live for a lot longer, it's inevitable that we'll have a lot more people diagnosed with dementia in the near future. Our services are not really ready to cope with that. And apart from all the work done in terms of the biomedical perspectives, we need to look at the person with dementia as well. And we need to cater for their needs. We need to make sure that they're not treated just as patients, but as human beings. And it's very important that they live their lives very, very happy and very, very active members of the community.
I feel really strongly that at Lancaster we have people who are working right at the vanguard of both the biomedical and cognitive end of the research, but also about the social interventions and finding ways to help people with dementia to live much more productive and meaningful lives. And I think that's something we do really well at Lancaster.